Good evening and welcome to the APAC edition of the vBrownBag podcast. I'm Alistair Cook, and this week we have our second episode of the Great APAC Storage Debate. Our usual background information, we've been doing some wonderfully fun things recently, and particularly at the top you'll see the excitement from last week was the VM Underground party, the opening acts at VM Underground, and all of the tech talks that we did at VMworld. I've got posts up with links to all of the vast amount of video content we produced last week up on professionalvmware.com. So there's 58 videos that we did as tech talks, the 6 from opening acts, and there's lots of really good material in there. This is the APAC edition of the vBrownBag podcast. You'll find other editions in other time zones. And I'm joined by a whole bunch of people. There were too many people involved in this to put on this slide, but we will have their names coming up shortly. The debate for this week is addressing the topic that Fibre Channel is the walking dead of storage infrastructure, just like tape. Kind of suggesting that its time has come and that it's past, and I guess we could have a discussion around cloud in the same terms, talking about conventional IT, but we're going to stick with this Fibre Channel discussion. I'm joined by 4, possibly 5 of my esteemed colleagues who are going to discuss this and actually hopefully bring some light to this area. Justin and John are going to agree with this statement that Fibre Channel is walking dead, that its time has passed. But arguing on the other side, we have Jeff and David, who you'll recall from last week, and we've been joined today by Andrew McGee from Hitachi Data Systems, who is a last-minute ring-in and is probably a little confused and somewhat regretting the rashness of agreeing to take part with us.
I'm a little bit nervous.
So this is why I've placed you nicely in the middle of the speaking. Normal form is that we're going to alternate, start with Justin in favour, and then Jeff will hit the beginnings of the arguments against, and so Andrew should have some time to see how this plays out and work out whether he should just hang up the phone call and run away and pretend it never happened. But to lead things out, I'm going to ask Justin to step in and talk a little bit about why it is that Fibre Channel is the walking dead in the storage industry, and maybe even why tape's walking dead.
Sure. I don't think I'll leave the tape thing for one thing, because clearly it is the year of tape.
I thought it was the year of VDI.
It's always the year of VDI.
It was
Also,
you
links on the desktop. Yes, we should VDI over Fibre Channel. That's what we should have, over tape. Which, why not? I mean, I haven't actually dealt with Fibre Channel all that much in recent years because it isn't around all that much. It tends to be in legacy environments. It tends to be, you're lucky if you've got some 8 gig connected Fibre Channel, even though it's been available since about 2005. I mean, 10 gig Fibre Channel, I think, it's been available since about 2008, but it doesn't get deployed all that much. Whereas I know that there's 40 gig Ethernet out, basically now. 10 gig E has been around for ages, and it's starting to make its way into servers now. And I know that there's 40 gig kicking around just around the corner. I mean, for those who don't actually know much about Fibre Channel, which is probably most of you, since we live in an Ethernet world these days, Fibre Channel is actually SCSI. It's basically SCSI with an IP address at the front. So SCSI, again, for those who don't know their history, is the Small Computer Systems Interface, which is originally designed for connecting small computers together in a daisy chain fashion. And I'm old enough to have sacrificed many a goat to the SCSI chain to make sure that it continues to work. I have actually manually set dip switches for the SCSI address for things on the SCSI chain.
I got to ask you, have you hand crimped 50-pin Centronics connectors?
I have not. I have not had the pleasure. I have, however, crimped my hand on one, so I don't know if that counts.
And I'm thinking you've probably got more here left than I have, which is probably one of the signs that you haven't tried to handle those connectors.
That's right. I didn't try to manually terminate too many of them. At least not in the way that it tells you to do so in the manual. So, I mean, all the storage connector stuff these days as well has moved on from SCSI. It's all SATA SAS. Well, SAS is. I actually learned this. SAS is actually serial attached SCSI, which is frightening, among other things. But SAS is something different. I can't remember. Oh no, sorry, SAS, serial attached SCSI. Yeah. So that is sort of in use, but that's for local connected things. It's not over networks. I think we're all pretty aware that as far as interconnection of data networks is concerned, whether you're moving data from a computer system off to a disk array or to a disk itself, Ethernet wins. It's winning everywhere. The deployed bandwidth is much higher. And even if you wanted to do something really fast, no one's using Fibre Channel, they use something like InfiniBand. So I think that Fibre Channel's day has come and gone. It shambles onwards because of the incredible expense that it, putting in directors and HBAs, they've been double or more the price of Fibre Channel, of even onboard iSCSI host bus adapters. Been double the price for years, so that's going to take a little while for people to depreciate those assets out of their data centers, but we have converged network adapters now, and if you really, really want to have Fibre Channel somewhere, you can run it over Ethernet. So I really don't see why we would need to continue to keep this shambling zombie of Fibre Channel alive for much longer. Hopefully Ethernet will manage to get the headshot and the zombie will die. So there we are. I can wrap it up there, I think. Okay, the prosecution rests.
That was very emotional.
Brought a tear to your eye?
Yeah. Oh, I feel very sad for whoever this Fibre Channel is.
Alas, for Fibre Channel.
I knew him right there.
All right, well, that's the argument. Yeah, I think we should have a next speaker, and Jeff is going to tell us why Fibre Channel is not undead, why it is still walking healthy on the earth.
Going to play a little bit of Eye of the Tiger first, just as you come down.
No one's in my line of sight today. No, so look, Justin, has some very valid points. Just unfortunately, they're all incorrect.
So the opposite of valid. Interesting interpretation of the word valid there.
No. Well, the market itself, I mean, it depends which vendor you ask, but the numbers I've seen, again, depends on the analyst or the vendor, but they're 60 to 80% in favour of Fibre Channel over IP. I think IP gets a significant amount of market share, but attributing that to storage is probably where the incorrectness might appear. But the other thing is, last time I bought Fibre Channel HBAs, which was recently, and the last time I bought a 10 gig Ethernet network card, I guarantee you the 10 gig one turned out to be far more expensive than that 8 gig HBA. That was my experience, but they so I'd say if you're buying 4 gig HBAs and 1 gig Ethernet, then absolutely probably the 4 gig cards were more expensive back in those days. But anyway, time's moved on. So for me, this debate is is kind of interesting. Last week we were talking about AFAs, or sorry, 2 weeks ago. And host-side caching, but I love both solutions, and really it was hard to delve one way or the other. And this week's the same. It's a paradox for me. When first this topic's put in front of me, I got issues with it, and I responded back to the guys, sort of saying, there's no clear winner because Fibre Channel is the outstanding winner, but I disagree that tape is going to live on. That's where my challenge is. So, to start my argument, Fibre Channel really has been, steady in my world. It's been my solace. It's been stable. It's been my rock. And since the dawn of time, it's just done what it's meant to do. In reality, it says what it does it does what it says on the tin. It's been the go-to guy for when you wanted that disk performance. you know, I've seen my fair share of Ethernet delivered storage, but you know, maybe it's me. Normally in enterprise implementations of IP storage, the failover settings, the multipathing, the Ether channel, the LACP settings. I mean, do I even want to talk about jumbo frames and what a Lindsay Lohan of a mess it is? You know, it's pretty, right? But as soon as you take it out for a night on the town, she puts you in the papers. Yeah, I kid. That's not true. But it's not that messed up. But it can be annoying, just like Lindsay Lohan. You know, every time IP storage is implemented, there's one thing I find normally occurs, and it comes down to a problem for the implementation. The network team own the Ethernet switches, so they take control of the delivery for IP storage. But these are BGP and RIP dudes. You know, they're not storage nerds. This is, you know, the FC storage switches are almost always owned by the storage team. This often results in smoother rollouts. You know, they've got full control of the delivery mechanism and the disk configuration, and you know, it's architected by the same team. In my experience, and that's where I'm basing my argument from, it normally results in a fairly smooth delivery. You know, the setup that comes with an FC SAN is generally about the disk config and not the delivery method. From an IP storage perspective, the delivery method is almost always a factor, and it's almost always fucked up.
Can you say that?
We're going to have to put a flag on this one.
I just did. Okay. So, so FC switches absolutely were more expensive in the past, but 10 gig ports are so not cheap. From a performance point, you know, you could really argue Ethernet has actually, you know, caught up and probably exceeds Fibre Channel to some extent, but, you know, Gen 6 Fibre Channel protocols and standards are coming out. Their specs are going up to 128 gigs, 100 gig Ethernet will be there. Really, I don't think speed is the factor or consideration that plays on most people's minds, as much as it maybe did in the past. But, you know, the gripe I have against IP storage is around convergence of a storage controller or a path failover. It's never been simple, in my opinion, when compared with an FC SAN. It does work, but I always used to get nervous when I was doing VMware implementations for some large organizations and we did a storage controller failover. You know, I was really nervous when it was FC, but when it was IP, it brought on overtime. You know, you set the OS settings to 60 or 180 seconds, and the OS might stay up when it's IP, but you know, in most cases, the enterprise apps died in the ass. And that was always a challenge for me with IP storage. Again, you know, these problems are workable, but, you know, that's just my experience. On the tape part, you know, which is where I have a challenge, is it won't die as much as I want to wring its neck. Yeah, it's because of the diehards, because of the ridiculous retention policies that organizations have got set. You know, the risk teams have authored these decades ago. They're long since gone, but that word in their policy says the word tape, so people still need to keep it around. You know, there are a lot of products out in the market about going tapeless, and they can change the economics. I certainly work for a vendor that we push that type of solution, but still have customers that have that requirement for tape, and thus, you know, it will live on. I just don't think it's going to be, you know, across the board. So, you know, to summarize my points, FC absolutely here to stay. It's not going anywhere. The all-new flash arrays we spoke about last week aren't getting rid of their FC ports. You know, they're really pushing a lot of performance through them. So, you know, it's still a method for getting access to high-speed and performant disk. If Ethernet was a standout, you know, winner, I suspect that we would see, you know, all the new technologies, you know, just get rid of the FC ports in their arrays and backends. You know, the last point I'd say is, you know, Ethernet does rock. It is great, but I rely on it for my media server hooked up to my TV. When I'm pushing CIFS, NFS, and iSCSI at home, it works. But when I want to go to the enterprise and get my shit done, I'm FC every day. Thank you.
And I got to ask Jeff, what are you drinking today? Because that's been a lot of loose language.
Those that know me know that's how I roll.
I like it. It wasn't as emotional, but I like it, Jeff. Thank you. No.
We're on the same team this week, so you have to like it.
He's just passionate.
Speaking of a passionate speaker, our second speaker in favour of our zombie postulate is our good friend John Martin. What have you got to say for yourself, Ricky?
So if you move to the slide that I carefully prepared, which has a picture of me which looks a little better than the one that you currently have up.
It was a heavy night before the
Fibre
photo, wasn't it?
Channel is a zombie. Now, I'll just go through the similarities. One, like zombie movies, it is almost everywhere. It also refuses to die. It is remarkably resilient. I will give that point to Mr. O'Connor and to the people who have carefully crafted their Fibre Channel networks and have carefully created them to be non-blocking and very reliable, and to the people who failed to do so, because I've seen some absolutely shocking design as well from people who thought they knew how to put together a Fibre Channel network, and it turns out they didn't. Maybe they were ex-Ethernet guys, but nonetheless, the trouble is, like zombies, it's a little bit stupid. It's non-routable. It is almost, by any definition of cloud scale, not actually scalable. It then tends to prefer dark places like lights-out data centers. You don't tend to find it in either light and airy places, like, say, cloud data centers, which I'm assured are full of light and bright and sort of ping-pong tables and things like that, because the people who work at cloud are enormously well paid. And spend most of the time on Xbox because everything is so thoroughly organized. It's extremely hard to extend, okay? Most of the design and most of the IP and most of the investment these days is going into something software-defined networking, software-defined, whatever you want to call it, right? That's where the hot spot is. And regardless of the fact that Fibre Channel continues to become extremely fast, I mean, I heard about sort of something like, 100 gigabyte per second fibre channel available. Now, this is just stupidly fast, because with the 4 gigabit stuff, with the monitoring tools that we had available to us, 95% of them are 5% utilized. The links are massively over-engineered for the most part. And this just won't generate any new progeny, okay? Everything in the future will probably be either virtualized or in some form of container, and that stuff will expect to live on some form of IP network. The other thing is that while the cards themselves are becoming commoditized, the expertise to build Fibre Channel networks and the amount of money and time and effort that people have spent building these things, it is like the bite of death from a zombie. Once it's in there, it tends to infect everything around it, and then you end up with large dedicated silos. It encourages the use of tape, which is also a zombie that refuses to die. I mean, that's the other thing about tape and Fibre Channel. They're like the two different kinds of zombies. There's the slow 1930s through 1950s style zombie, like kind of Shaun of the Dead style zombie. That's tape. And then there's the fast, annoying zombie like Fibre Channel that just sort of clambers over your walls to check any sort of hint of sound about, like, the fact that let's go through and do something new. And it creates kind of aggressive behavior on parts of storage teams. They don't like cooperating with people. It creates those balkanized areas where the storage team defends its turf stringently against what is inevitably going to be, like, not about the equipment. It's not going to be about Fibre Channel. It's not going to be about tape. It's not going to be about any of these infrastructure things. It's going to be how do I deliver a quality of service flexibly and reliably, and do so in a way that allows me to cater to the fact that I'm going to have billions of endpoints, right? The Internet of Things, the Internet of People, the Internet of, everything is going to be connected by, and so that's the reason why Fibre Channel is a zombie. And with that, I'm done.
A little more impassioned. But I think you're suffering, John, from the effects of your new diet of brain.
Hey, I have to get my mandatory zombie joke in and my dad joke. What does the vegetarian zombie eat? Brains.
Brains.
Is that a point to our team for such a bad joke?
Should be.
Yeah.
Ding! Time's up!
Yeah, sorry, Andrew, your time's not up yet. You have to
didn't like
to
your
step
closing
in
argument.
here and try and attack the zombies, or at least tell us that there aren't zombies. These aren't the zombies you're looking for.
Attack the zombie that's wearing glasses. I found that a bit amusing, actually, why a zombie needs to wear glasses. But anyway. I'd just like to thank John for pointing out how efficient Fibre Channel is and the tremendous speeds that you can get with Fibre Channel. So thanks, John, for pointing that out. I think, and as Jeff mentioned, Fibre Channel's been around for a long time. Storage people know Fibre Channel. It's a tried and true method, and it hasn't really changed much apart from the speeds in the time since we've implemented Fibre Channel. We have some new tools. Yes, we can troubleshoot it a lot better, but it pretty much is a robust kind of technology and a robust methodology that storage people have been implementing for a while. And to get to the point of like storage people being kind of a law unto themselves a little bit, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because keeping the storage network away from the general purpose network is probably a prudent thing to do, and it's like something storage is such a critical part of any enterprise today that keeping that thing separate and keeping it efficient and on its own dedicated kind of protocol and its own dedicated network is I think is a smart thing to do, and that's probably why it's stuck around. When you think about it, if IP and Ethernet networks are so good, why do we see organisations deploying separate standalone networks just for management, or have a separate network just for backup traffic? Why do they need to do that? Because I think most people realise that having a dedicated network or having a network that's custom designed for a specific workload is a prudent thing to do and is the way to go. So, a lot of our customers, I'd say Fibre Channel is pretty pervasive in the storage world, probably more so in the enterprise than in the small to medium business. Even today, greenfield sites we see deploying Fibre Channel. So it's not just the legacy or the historical thing where we just update our directories every refresh cycle because it's easier to do that. We're seeing new deployments and they're deploying Fibre Channel. And I think it's just a risk thing. People want to mitigate that risk, and they know. IP, Ethernet networks are designed for traffic arriving out of order, which is great when you want to route things and when you want things to go over like very high latency kind of networks and around the world or over WANs, etc. Fibre Channel is designed purely for speed and purely for, as we pointed out, it's a SCSI protocol, so it's serial and it's fast, extremely fast. And actually, to get to Justin's point about SCSI that he mentioned, it tried to put it in a light as if it's like an old and outdated kind of technology. SCSI is still like faster and more optimized for I/O than some of the newer technologies we're seeing like SATA, for instance. So your queuing, optimization, things like that is very well developed and very mature in SCSI. And so I think that's why having SCSI over a dedicated optical network such as Fibre Channel is still the way to go and still what we're seeing. I guess. Probably my last point to bring up, and this is something, just an observation of the market or the landscape of the vendors, is that, we saw a couple of years ago Cisco didn't really drop support for Fibre Channel, but they just kind of paused on it for a minute because they started to go down the path of FCOE and let's put Fibre Channel over Ethernet, let's go down that path. Now, and they didn't announce any 16 gigabit kind of Fibre Channel capability in their new directives. Brocade did, now Cisco are. So Cisco have kind of almost done an about turn on that, and they've come back to the party and they're saying, you know what, we are bringing out new Fibre Channel technology and we are bringing out Fibre Channel speed. So I'd end it there with that observation from a market perspective to say that Fibre Channel's not dead. It's being developed. The vendors out there are producing new Fibre Channel devices, new directors. It's a healthy market, and I think it will be for a while, unlike tape potentially.
So we're still seeing no love for tape?
Never say never.
I guess I should ask the group at large.
Once worked with a colleague that declared a jihad on tape, and that wasn't a wise move.
What about a mixtape? A mixtape's very good for dating, the establishing of that relationship at the start.
You've not dated for a while, have you?
Does it show?
Yeah.
If 1984 rang, give me back the Walkman.
You don't believe iTunes problem isn't the same.
No.
It's not the same. You can't give somebody your defining music on iTunes. You can only play it for
Well,
them.
not on iTunes, but you upload it to SoundCloud.
You give them a
Or put it on
playlist.
Tumblr.
Maybe you could just bring that personal touch of tapping a phone against each other just to pass it on.
With appropriate protection, of course.
Oh, of course. You wouldn't do it with an uncovered phone.
Here's Samsung's next marketing campaign.
Well, yeah, I won't show you what happened to my uncovered phone, but it made me cry.
Ew.
Sharing violation.
Yeah.
It was late at night and outside my car. But raising the standards back up again, I think it's time to call on David to continue to support the argument that Fibre Channel is a living technology. Normally we would be switching over against, so I'm going to rely on David, I think, to split the difference and argue both for and against in the same form as he did last year, last episode, last year.
Does it feel like a year ago?
Well, yeah, VMworld was a big thing. It took a lot of energy, so it might have been a whole year's worth, and I'm still not sleeping straight.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. So it's been great. I think my team has argued very, very well with this. And as I don my cardigan and reflect back on my old token ring and Arkneck days, I'm a...
Channel over token ring for the win.
Yeah, and I'm still waiting for that to come, get up and get faster. But there was a couple of points just to sort of touch back on some statements Justin made. Justin, you mentioned that you don't see any Fibre Channel around in the marketplace anymore, which is fair enough, because I can see how you could miss where there's over 10 million ports that have been deployed out there. Billions of dollars of investment in the fabric and the Fibre Channel services within the enterprise sort of class organisations, and those that really need critical serviceability from their storage services. Very easy to miss. It just you don't see it at the tuck shop down on the corner with their 8-port Ethernet hub. I must admit, they're definitely not going to invest in Fibre Channel. But they're also going to probably stick to 1 gigabit Ethernet as well, because their investment in a 10 gig Ethernet infrastructure is also quite expensive. And the other side is if you start doing endpoint connectivity at 10 gig and you're all on a routed network and you're feeding into common common core at the back end, then obviously you end up with a lot of congestion. Ethernet is really good and is built and engineered in a way to ensure that it is able to cope with those sort of scenarios. And it does that by starting to throw away the packets. That's exactly what you want with your critical storage workload, is a certain level of packet loss and that sort of unreliability that can come from a overworked network when you're in a routed situation. That's why we think, the dumbness of the Fibre Channel and that non-routable connection, that sort of lossless serviceability that Fibre Channel gives, the sort of encapsulating and providing those services, keeping it near and connectivity near and straight between your storage assets and the endpoints that are sort of utilising that, giving that a really robust, fast, performant, predictable, manageable, serviceable quality of service to your enterprise class workloads. But I also emphasise that's for those enterprise class workloads, those high level demands that you would have with certain use cases. But of course there's the other use cases, and it's the right tool for the right workload. And in some cases the investment in Fibre Channel or the you know, some of the overhead that goes with that may not be appropriate. And there's a definite big demand there for the IP-based services that you may want for those storage services. Those ones where it's okay, I want scenarios. The Ethernet is there for you and can provide that sort of foundation of service. But of course, it'll be a lot easier to do that in a 1 gig network because of the inherent cost that comes with direct 10 gig port investment when compared to some of the, the low-end edge fabric switches that you can get now, and which have driven the speed up but the port price down. And in line with that, with the HVAs. Of course, you can get the best of both worlds and utilise FCOE, but then FCOE obviously comes with, like anything that sort of wraps itself over itself as sort of thing. There's an inherent tax that goes with that. So you're sort of compromised by getting in the middle of the road, so you'll lose some of the fundamental sort of beauty that is with that sort of direct, straight through, predictable sort of service that a Fibre Channel can provide. But yeah, I can see how you'd miss that out in the marketplace, and it is not there. There is a lot of cardigan out there, and we all still like our Fibre Channel services. And I'm very excited, John, that you pointed out how fast it's going to go. And these standards, they're going up. It's pretty well, we're doubling every 3 to 4 years in the Fibre Channel space. Of course, we're parallel to that. We've also got the got Ethernet going up, and there's mentioned there of the 40 gig Ethernet. That's nice. And obviously we've got 32 coming out with Fibre Channel, and we're going to go. It's going to support parallel LAN, so we're going to go up to 128 in the near future, which will also service those really high frequency, high I/O loads, high density that we'll see within these very compressed virtual environments that we see around us these days. So it's sort of great. So I can see, for me, if I'm getting to my files and all that out there, I can have a reasonably robust sort of service through the Ethernet network, and we've seen the evolution. Finally, NFS4 is coming out there. We've got SMB3 and all that coming out there, giving us a little bit more robustness, a little bit more of that spread. Jeff made a great point about path management and all that, and trying to team it all up and all the complexities that go with Ethernet. That's so much harder in Fibre Channel. I know, that creation, assign a vSAN, create a zone. So there's at least a couple of steps in there that you need to get a robust interconnect between 2 points. But if you want reliable and persistence and all that, obviously Ethernet can get that too. And Ethernet, they'll even tote that these days that they're also a lossless protocol. But where are we with lossless? I look down onto my Mac Apple sort of network here, and my kids were already complaining out the back there, saying to me that their Age of Empires, whatever they were playing, it was getting disconnected offline. Do you think that I get that from the storage, if it was Fibre Channel? No. I know I don't have Fibre Channel within my house, but I know it would be more reliable than that if I did, and they would be happily watching movies off my local storage infrastructure instead of worrying about that intermittent connectivity when it's going over to Ethernet and fully congested network and even out into the wild in a routable world.
Clearly, your children experienced the joy of a SCSI bus reset on a Fibre Channel arbitrated loop from a tape drive posted down the entire sound.
Oh, they hunt that down. They hunt.
I say we all go back to mainframes and FICON.
Yes! FTV.
Yeah.
Or
Bring it on.
Fibre Channel
Well, what? We did mention the crimping tool earlier. Those days need to come back and come back soon. The quality of service was huge. That I was particularly good at a crimping tool in my day. You could guarantee you could get almost some sort of service out of it at the end.
Do you remember pushing those ribbon cables back onto the little pin?
When the strain relief fell off on the back and the peel away.
So my theory on this sort of stuff, it's an interesting one. I believe that all plumbers and all cabinet makers are actually in it for each other. So one guy comes and tightens up the pipe only halfway, and the other guy's got to get a call out, and no matter what, they only just do the pipes up halfway, so everyone else gets a call out, keeps them all in the job. It's the same with IT, right? We're going to go back to the mainframe, centralize it, get everyone in jobs that way, and then we're going to go, hey, stop. Now we need to decentralize it because everyone's got to, maintain the job and keep everyone employed. That's what it's all about. Yeah, it's about money.
Have you considered a career in consulting?
Unfortunately, that was my life for many, many years. But yeah, it's
120 pages of inconclusiveness at the end.
What conclusion would you like us to get to?
I once came to the conclusion that mentioned the name Penfolds and bin 345 or something like that was written into the document because I've been drinking the red all night and happened to think it was the customer's name. Sent it to the customer the next day. They were none the wiser.
That is an excellent conclusion to come to.
No one reads those documents anyway, so they never picked it up. Well, yeah.
Was that a VDI document? Because obviously now's the time to read one of those.
Mate, that was a contact document.
I'm a big fan of Easter eggs in technical documentation.
Yeah.
Just to see if anybody actually reads.
Yeah.
No, I was just too pissed. I didn't even do it on purpose.
Oh, you've got to done it again, Jeff. You're turning this into an adults-only podcast.
The content advisory will be up. May contain Jeff O'Connor.
We'll call you, from now on, you're Mr. Bleep.
It's not the first time I've been called that.
So have we reached a conclusion here? Have we convinced anybody that was in favour of the idea that Fibre Channel is Walking Dead that in fact there is life still in Fibre Channel, or if those who argue that there is life in Fibre Channel actually seen the light or indeed the darkness that there is in fact Walking Dead, that they themselves are espousing the value of the Walking Dead and may themselves be the career Walking Dead?
So
You go first.
yeah, I was just going to say technology will continue to evolve, and there will be, and Ethernet itself will also move on eventually. Something will supersede it, and there will be the connectivity demands based on the workloads, and technology will change and adapt to those demands. As you know, ArcNet's not going to come back soon. Token Ring it shouldn't be coming back soon. I'm sure it's still out there somewhere. And we'll also see Token Ring will transform into something magical also in the future, but based on technology changes.
God, I hope not.
So we should see some token passing in Ethernet soon.
Yes, I think, look, Fibre Channel it has its uses, but I think they're becoming more niche, and the requirements for that sort of high-speed, highly reliable, gold-plated network is less. Mostly from a cost perspective. The cost trade-off, most people are dealing with the kind of reliability stuff is moving more into software, which is where it should be in the first place, really.
The cost one's interesting though, because 10 gig ePorts have not dropped in price the way we expected them to. We would have expected that now they've been available for a few years, they should cost a tenth of what they cost when they were new, and they don't. They're still a significant fraction of the original prices.
No,
they haven't been pushed out into server land yet, because whereas 1 gig E had, I think we're going to start seeing 10 gig E hit server, and that's where you'll get the volumes, and that's what we're seeing with x86
I think
and everything.
10 gig go straight to 25. There was an interesting thing about the economics of 25 gig Ethernet for cloud providers, which I was really shocked by. It was like Dell and Google and Amazon, everybody else basically sort of saying, screw 40 gigs, we're all going to go to 25, and the economics of it, like just from power consumption and port density and all that stuff, made lots and lots of sense. So I think with the hyperscale stuff where that stuff will be coming through the ODMs and probably stuff like EvoRail and blah, 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 will probably mean 25 will get the nod. The other interesting thing is, so I'm going to reverse my position slightly. We did some tests a little while ago. Even though InfiniBand is actually faster on a specification for the interconnects, most of the maturity of the Fibre Channel implementations at the host, just talking about the software stuff, at the host, the Fibre Channel implementations are so mature and so well optimized that it's actually faster to do things on Fibre Channel than it is to do things using RDMA, which just goes completely against what you would expect from an architectural perspective. But over time, that will be superior enough that RDMA really will be the way in which interconnects for network stuff, be it east-west, hyperconverged, or north-south through shared storage infrastructures, that will eventually be the winner, and I don't see Fibre Channel being part of that in the long term.
That's interesting, John. What do you think, actually, on InfiniBand, what do you think is the main limiting factor for uptake?
Driver maturity at the operating system level and familiarity. Up until recently, like, it was a lot more expensive. For certain sizes of implementations, InfiniBand is much less expensive. It's like I say, a lot of the rules of thumb we had about Fibre Channel is expensive and Ethernet's cheap. Well, Ethernet isn't that cheap, and we're all converging, partly because we're all converging on the same kind of physical interconnect. You know, it's the same optical cable, it's the same physical stuff, which, you know, somebody from Cisco spent a while explaining to me, and it sort of kind of went over my head, and I got really bored. But so many of the expensive bits are shared between the infrastructures. In the end, the things which differentiate them are things like FPGAs and silicon inside the switches themselves. And while that could just come down to economies of scale, the disruptive players like the InfiniBand players are quite willing to go in at lower margins than the established Fibre Channel and Ethernet players. So, in cost to the customer isn't that different.
The other
Yeah,
factor
that's why I can see if you ship more ports, like it's the same with Ethernet. If it starts to get into more consumer devices, and we saw that's why Flash dropped in price so fast, because it was in consumer devices and the volumes are just ridiculously high compared to shipping ports to enterprise. So if we start to see 10 gig E getting into home routers and servers, you know, if it lands in a gigabyte motherboard, because the gamers decide that they need that for some reason, that'll just drop the pricing for everyone else in that market. Whereas I can't see that a Fibre Channel port or any of that Fibre Channel infrastructure making it into consumer land.
I don't think Fibre Channel would ever be targeted at the consumer land. I would see Fibre Channel really is for those critical workloads. It's the beauty of Fibre Channel is it's segregated away from the general Ethernet network, and when everything must be serviceable, must be, you know, have the absolute highest level of performance, responsiveness, serviceability, etc. You separate it off, isolate it off, keep it close. Now that's not every workload, and that's obviously just those that demand it. But that's where the Fibre Channel will retain its foothold in our data centers.
Yeah, probably. With the people who are willing to pay the price for that. Yeah.
Well, if we go if we accept that consumerization statement, then it will probably be USB 4. But, well, let me get rid of my dog.
Doesn't like USB 4?
Well, if we're going to go for the consumerization, it's going to be Thunderbolt that kills it out, being 20 gigs and a nice, simple, easy to use connector.
So are we all saying that FireWire is dead?
FireWire is dead.
Yeah.
Except for as a tape interconnect method.
No.
FireWire over Token Ring.
Do we have any time left, or are we almost done?
We have a few minutes if you've got something to add.
No, I think I only had stuff to take away.
The other thing I was going to say is we're going to talk about like next generation interconnects and stuff like that. Is that there was some interesting stuff about the NVMe, kind of coming back to last week's Flash discussion. Because one of the troubles with SCSI is that, and RDMA, or less so RDMA, but one of the troubles with SCSI and Fibre Channel, which are intimately linked, is it kind of assumes really limited queue depth. Take a look at the NVMe programming model, which is going to be far more, looking a lot more like PCIe interconnects, once people figure out how to extend PCIe over large distances, which RDMA and InfiniBand kind of was designed to do in the first place. PCIe was a sort of cut-down, novelled-up version of InfiniBand. This idea of server area networks properly comes back. These sort of server area networks built upon something that's likely to look like PCIe, that's probably what's going to kill it. Because in the end, I think that mass storage will all be solid state, except anything that's running out, anything that's not running inside of Google or Amazon or anybody else like that. I still tend to think anything you're likely to run in your data center, unless you're a cloud provider, will probably be solid state in the longer term. And in order to take advantage of that, genuinely, you're going to need something that looks and feels and makes it act like memory rather than something that makes it act like storage. I think that's the how Fibre Channel is going to die.
No, I'm 100% with you on that, John. And obviously, we have solutions heading in that path as well, of that very close, like, sort of memory extension capability. And, but again, it's around the use case. Those certain ones will drive that. There will be specifics. So the right horse for the right course on that. That will make us keep hold of certain technologies. Maybe spinning Rust will still be around in the future as an extreme low performance, high density solution, and then we'll have that discussion in 10 years as well. Over that goes on, but you're smack on the fact that the flash price is getting crazy now. The price per gig versus IO is definitely seen as a preferred path. Carry on.
Yeah. And the nice thing is PCIe is already going to be already in every server. So just PCIe.next, which is there's a name for it. I completely forgotten what it is, but it's being looked at in and stuff like that. Lots of really interesting stuff. Pity that everybody thinks it's boring.
So we're seeing some very you're seeing some pretty cool stuff coming out of PCIe, where the multi-lanes and the throughput they can get through to that. So proprietary, the first part, moving away from like the 16 lanes to 100, into the 3 figures.
And then you got stuff like the memory channel storage out of Diablo.
The numbers are... Yeah. Or the crossbar stuff, which looks just outstanding. I look at it and go, Jeff O'Connor, the swearing version.
Did Jeff just get beat?
No, my name is the Beep.
Mr.
I'm
Beep.
invoking Jeff's name in vain.
That's fine. Not the first time that happened.
Nor the last.
So Fibre Channel is the Walking Dead of storage. I think we're saying it may be or will be, but not is being current form.
So the rumours of its undeadness are much exaggerated.
No, it's been bitten, but it hasn't yet succumbed.
It still has a place.
Well, I think on that
It's not
bombshell
here yet. It doesn't want to go on the card.
we might call it a day. The bombshell that Fibre Channel is still alive and is still out there in your data center, and that you can probably walk past it without it shuffling after you. This has been the APAC edition of the professional VMware vBrownBag. The storage debates will continue. We can take a little bit of a break. I'm in the US for the next time we're due to run, and that makes it 3 o'clock in the morning when this happens, and I just don't think I'm going to be alive for that. So we'll return on the 2nd of October for another discussion of some contentious issue on storage. This has been the vBrownBag. We'll see you again.